Now, he was Barack Obama's right-hand man and a political bruiser who, even before Obama, had apparently inspired a character in the TV series West Wing. But after 2 years at the White House, Rahm Emanuel returned to Chicago to become mayor. Now he's heading an ambitious plan to pump billions of dollars into the city. Rails, roads, sewers and schools will all be revamped in a controversial fiscal stimulus. For tonight's special report, our Washington correspondent Matt Frei has been to Chicago to meet its larger-than-life mayor.
Look, Chicago is the most American of American cities. It has its spirit, its strength, its work ethic, and its values. New York's not representative of the United States, and Hollywood's not representative of the United States. Chicago's representative of the United States.
Take it from the city's mayor, who also happens to be one of America's most colourful and perhaps unrepresentative politicians. Rahm Emanuel has put Chicago at the very centre of a global debate about how to revive ailing economies.
Mr. Mayor, how are you?
Good, you?
Trained ballet dancer, ex-volunteer in the Israeli army, and former congressman. He left his last job as President Obama's right-hand man to run his hometown. Rambo, to his enemies and his friends, is now busy pumping money into Chicago, raised by slashing waste and increasing fees like water rates, but he insists not by raising taxes.
This is going to cost you, you've outlined, more than $7 billion over the next 3 years.
And put 30,000 people to work.
Okay, but $7 billion. There's not much of an appetite at the moment from anyone for spending that kind of money, is there?
Yeah, but if I'm going to spend $7 billion, it's the most productive $7 billion I can get.
But how do you know that?
A lot of studies done by a lot of what I call propeller heads out of the universities. In the 50s and 60s, when the United States spent 4% of its GDP on the infrastructure, its economy grew at 4%. In the 80s, when we downsized to 2%, our economies on average grew 2%. Now, it's not A equals A, but the health and well-being of your infrastructure is essential to what speed your economy can grow at. We have a 21st century economy here in the city, but it's laying on or sitting on top of a 20th century foundation.
You can't escape these posters. They're all over a city which is getting a much-needed makeover.
Doors closing.
We rode on the famous L train, and below the elevated tracks, this is what they're fixing. Bridges and girders that are so old they remember Al Capone as a toddler. Crumbling infrastructure, an American disease that in this city provides an opportunity for jobs.
30,000 jobs. Bricklayers, carpenters, operating engineers, iron workers, electrical workers, all fixing this city. Yes, they're jobs today, and also they lay the foundations for incredible economic growth and opportunity down the road. I will not cut my way to growth. I will do the necessary reforms to ignite economic growth, which helps us on a fiscal side as well as lead to a better quality of life in the city.
President Barack Obama's home, Hyde Park community, near the university.
If only his former boss, President Obama, could sound this convincing. Granted, it's easier to run a city than a country, but Chicago has both grit and sand. It is a microcosm, a genuine one.
To what extent, Mayor, do you think that what you're trying to do in Chicago is a kind of petri dish for what's going on in the wider country?
Well, look, I don't do it because it's a petri dish. I do it to make Chicago a more competitive city.
But the big debate at the moment in the country is between government-driven stimulus and the market.
I think that's like a false debate.
You do?
Oh, sure. I think it's
Why?
Because I think it's a false debate. It's not private, public, small government, big government. Are we a modern government, a reform government, a strategic government that is thinking and investing ahead?
So you're saying that basically the argument between small government, big government, government versus the free market is irrelevant. But that is an argument.
No, it's a foolish argument.
But it's an argument that's taking place in this country in this election year.
It's happening
it's
happening in Europe.
Exactly.
I'm interested not in the size of government, but it being most productive type of government, so you can be the most productive society.
But why does the majority of Americans no longer see it that way? Government is a dirty word in this country.
Again, that's a false premise. Because if you ask...
It's true.
No, that's a...
Look at the opinion polls.
Let me if you ask it that way.
It's all about the question.
I don't mean to do this, so don't get it wrong. It's not a really good question. so don't get upset by that. The question
I'm
is,
hurt.
well, I'll hug you at the end of the interview. I'll make it up to you with a good hug, okay? It's not about the size of government. It's what it does. And that's why, like, to me, this is like, I'm not interested in left, I'm not interested in right, I'm interested in moving forward.
One person who could do with the Rahm hug and some of his bravado is the president, whose fight for re-election has been made so much harder by an ailing economy.
I think it's a tough environment. I do think, though, he has a very important case to make, which is, in the Oval Office, whose voices will be heard at that desk? A person who has fought to restore the American dream, or somebody who hasn't cared about the middle class, has never shown in their public or private career a concern for the middle class? Because I know, having sat by President Obama's side through some very difficult choices, it is the voices of the middle class that have reached his desk and that make him tick.
But that is Washington. For now, Rahm Emanuel is trying to reinvent Chicago. He's already proven that he can reinvent himself.
You trained as a ballet dancer, which is one of the most wonderful facts about you. Did that in any way help you to deal with the daily political dance that you have to deal with?
No, with this interview, but not daily political stuff. It's got a lot of fast footwork.
We haven't danced yet, have we? I wasn't going to ask you, to be honest.
Let me say this. We're not going to.
Damn!
We may be spared a dance, and the mayor's bold vision may not work out in the end. But if you want to find out where America could be heading, going to the top of the country's tallest building and looking down on Chicago is not a bad place to start.
Matt Frei talking to Rahm Emanuel.